I thought I had the perfect life. A beautiful home in the suburbs, a successful career as a software engineer, and Amanda, my wife of 5 years, who I believed was my soulmate. We had worked so hard to buy our dream house, saving every penny for years. But lately something had changed in her. Small things at first barely noticeable. Then came that fateful day when I returned from a business trip to find divorce papers on our kitchen counter. I had no idea what was coming next. Before I continue, let me know where you are watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you want more real stories like mine. Amanda and I met 8 years ago at my college roommate's housewarming party. I still remember how she lit up the room when she walked in wearing a blue sundress and the most genuine smile I had ever seen. We connected instantly over our shared dream of one day owning a beautiful home where we could build our lives together. After dating for 3 years, we got married in a small ceremony with just our closest friends and family present. From the beginning, we both worked toward our dream of home ownership. I put in long hours at the software company, often taking on extra projects for the additional income. Amanda worked as a marketing coordinator, and together we saved every penny we could. We lived in a tiny one-bedroom apartment, skipped vacations, and rarely ate out. Our friends called us the power-saving couple. 2 years ago, all our sacrifices finally paid off. We found the perfect house in a desirable neighborhood, with good schools nearby, thinking ahead to the family we planned to have. I still remember the day we got the keys. Amanda cried tears of joy as we walked through our empty living room, planning where everything would go. That night, we toasted with champagne on our empty floor, surrounded by nothing but dreams and possibilities. Looking back, I realized the changes in Amanda started shortly after we moved into the house. At first they were subtle. She began joining a new social circle, women from the neighborhood, who lived in even larger homes and drove luxury cars. Her style changed, becoming more expensive. Suddenly, our furniture was not good enough. Our car too modest, my clothes too casual, for the dinner parties she wanted to attend. The arguments about money started small, but grew more frequent. I tried explaining that we needed to be careful with our finances after stretching to buy the house, but Amanda seemed increasingly frustrated with our lifestyle. I suggested couples counseling, date nights, weekend getaways, to reconnect, anything to bridge the growing gap between us. She would agree things would improve temporarily, and then we would slide back into tension and silence. When my company asked me to attend a 2-week conference in Seattle, I was hesitant to leave with things so strained at home. Amanda insisted I go, saying it would be good for my career and that the space might help us both get perspective. During the first week away, her calls seemed normal, checking in about the house and asking about the conference. During the second week, something changed in her tone. She sounded distant, preoccupied. 3 days before I was scheduled to return, Amanda called and suggested I extend my trip to visit my brother in San Francisco, since I was already on the West Coast. It seemed like a reasonable idea, though my brother was surprised by my last-minute call. During that week, I received several notifications from our bank about transfers and account changes, but the banking app was glitching on my phone. I made a mental note to check everything when I got home. After 3 weeks away, I finally walked through our front door, exhausted but hopeful that the time apart had helped. The house felt different immediately. The silence was too complete, too hollow. I called out for Amanda but got no answer. When I walked into our bedroom, I found the closet half empty, her drawers cleared out. My stomach dropped as I raced back downstairs, where a manila envelope sat on the kitchen counter, my name written in her familiar handwriting. Inside were divorce papers already signed by Amanda, along with a brief note saying she needed space and would be staying with a friend. No real explanation, no opportunity to talk things through, just the cold reality of legal documents that would end our marriage. I called her immediately, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. When Amanda finally answered, her voice was controlled, distant. She said she had been unhappy for a long time and needed to move on with her life. When I asked where she was staying, she refused to tell me. When I asked to meet and talk things through, she said everything had already been decided. The call lasted less than 5 minutes, but it shattered the life I thought we had built together. The week after finding those divorce papers was the worst of my life. I barely ate or slept, calling Amanda repeatedly, only to be sent to voicemail. When she did respond to texts, her answers were short and cold, nothing like the woman I had married. I took emergency leave from work, unable to focus on anything beyond the crater where my life had been. My best friend Michael came over daily, making sure I ate and helping me process what was happening. After watching me spiral for days, he mentioned that his cousin James was an attorney who specialized in family law. I was reluctant at first, still believing that Amanda and I could work things out if we just talked. But when she finally responded to a text by saying she had already hired a lawyer, I realized I needed to protect myself. James Taylor, Michael's cousin, agreed to meet me the next day. He was straightforward but compassionate, explaining that I needed to understand exactly what I was facing before we could develop a strategy. He asked me to bring all financial documents, property records, and any prenuptial agreements we might have signed. I spent that night digging through our home office, pulling together everything I could find. During our meeting, James reviewed the documents while asking me questions about our assets, debts, and the history of our relationship. When he got to the property records, his expression changed. He asked when we had purchased the house and whose names were on the deed. I explained that we had bought it 2 years ago and that, of course, both our names were on all the paperwork. James pulled out the property record he had retrieved from the county database. According to the current deed, the house was solely in Amanda's name. My name had been removed completely. The transfer had been executed 3 weeks ago, while I was at the conference in Seattle. The timing suddenly made terrible sense. Amanda had orchestrated my extended absence to handle the transfer without my knowledge. The realization that this betrayal had been planned made me physically ill. James asked if I had signed any documents recently or given Amanda power of attorney. I shook my head, still trying to process what this meant. He explained that in our state, property transfers between spouses typically required signatures from both parties, especially for a primary residence purchased together. Something was very wrong with this picture. With my permission, James hired a private investigator to look deeper into Amanda's recent activities. What we discovered over the next 2 weeks was devastating. Amanda had been seeing someone else for at least 6 months, a wealthy real estate investor named Thomas Baldwin, who she had met through her new social circle. The investigator found photos of them together at restaurants and hotels dating back months before she filed for divorce. Even worse, Amanda had systematically emptied our joint savings account, transferring nearly $70,000 into a private account I knew nothing about. She had applied for new credit cards in her name, only making large purchases in the months leading up to her leaving. She had consulted with 3 different divorce attorneys before selecting one of the most aggressive lawyers in the city, meeting with him for the first time, nearly 4 months before I found those papers on our counter. Everything in our marriage had been a lie for at least half a year, maybe longer. Each discovery was another body blow, leaving me reeling. I temporarily moved into Michael's guest room, unable to stay in the house, filled with memories of what I now knew was fake happiness. I spent sleepless nights going through our financial history, trying to understand the scope of her deception. One night, while searching through my email for any property documents, I found the original purchase agreement for our home. Something caught my eye that I had completely forgotten about. Before signing the final papers, I had insisted on adding a special contingency clause regarding any future property transfers. Having seen a friend lose his house in a difficult divorce, I had wanted extra protection for both of us. The clause required dual signatures, notarized and witnessed, for any transfer of ownership. I forwarded the document to James immediately, despite it being after midnight. He called me first thing the next morning, a new energy in his voice. This could be the key to invalidating the fraudulent transfer, he explained. If the clause was properly executed in our original agreement, Amanda's secret deed transfer would have violated a legally binding contract. For the first time since finding those divorce papers, I felt a glimmer of hope. 6 weeks after discovering the divorce papers, we had our first court appearance. I arrived with James, nervous, but determined to fight for what was rightfully mine. When Amanda walked in with her attorney, I barely recognized her. She wore an expensive designer suit I had never seen before, her hair styled differently, Even the way she carried herself had changed. Behind her walked a tall man in an Italian suit, who I recognized from the investigators' photos as Thomas Baldwin. The sight of them together, so confident and comfortable, sent a surge of anger through me that I struggled to control. James placed a steadying hand on my arm, reminding me to stay focused. Amanda glanced in my direction, but quickly looked away, taking a seat on the opposite side of the courtroom. Her attorney, Benjamin Wilson, began with an aggressive opening statement, claiming that Amanda was entitled to the house entirely, as it was now solely in her name. He argued that I had been financially irresponsible, working too much, and neglecting Amanda, emotionally painting a picture of me as an absent, uncaring husband that I could hardly recognize. Throughout Wilson's character assassination, Amanda sat with perfect posture, occasionally whispering to Thomas. When her lawyer confidently stated that the house belonged to Amanda alone, and that I should be responsible for half the outstanding mortgage, despite having no ownership, I saw a smirk flash across her face. That expression, so cold and unfamiliar, finally erased any lingering hope that the woman I had loved was still in there somewhere. When Wilson finished, James calmly asked the judge for a brief recess to present evidence that had direct bearing on the property dispute. The judge looked irritated at the interruption, but agreed to a 15-minute break. During the recess, James reassured me that we were in a stronger position than Amanda realized. When court resumed, James approached with a file containing our original purchase documents. His calm demeanor contrasted sharply with Wilson's earlier theatrics. He methodically explained to the judge that we had discovered a potential issue with the property transfer that needed to be addressed before other matters could be fairly considered. James presented the original purchase agreement, directing the judge's attention to the special contingency clause on page 7. The clause explicitly stated that any transfer of ownership of the property required notarized signatures from both original owners, along with a witness signature. The language was unambiguous, included specifically to protect both parties from exactly this type of situation. Amanda leaned forward, her confident expression faltering for the first time. She whispered urgently to her attorney, who looked increasingly uncomfortable as he flipped through his own documents. The judge carefully reviewed the clause, asking several questions about its validity and inclusion in the final recorded documents. James explained that the clause had been properly executed, included in the final documents, and recorded with the deed. He then presented the recent property transfer, which contained only Amanda's signature and had been processed without my knowledge or consent. Based on the binding clause in our original agreement, James argued this transfer was fraudulent and should be immediately invalidated. The judge took nearly 20 minutes to review all the documents, during which the courtroom remained uncomfortably silent. Amanda's smirk had completely vanished, replaced by a tense, rigid expression. Her attorney made several attempts to whisper explanations to her, but she brushed him off, staring straight ahead. Finally, the judge looked up and delivered his opinion. The contingency clause was indeed valid and binding. The recent property transfer had violated the terms of our original agreement and appeared to have been executed without my knowledge or consent. He ordered an immediate reversal of the property transfer, restoring joint ownership until a final divorce settlement could be reached. The moment the judge announced his decision, Amanda's composure shattered. She stood up abruptly, her face flushed with anger. She accused me of tricking her, of manipulating the system, of stealing what was rightfully hers. The judge had to warn her twice about her conduct before she finally fell silent, her eyes burning with hatred. I never thought possible from someone I had once loved so deeply. As we left the courtroom, I felt no triumph, only a profound sadness for what had been lost and relief that justice had prevailed. James assured me that this was just the first step, but an important one. The fraudulent transfer had revealed Amanda's true intentions, which would significantly impact how the court viewed the rest of her claims. In the months following that first court appearance, Amanda's carefully constructed plan continued to unravel. The revelation of the fraudulent transfer damaged her credibility with the court, leading to intense scrutiny of all her financial claims. The judge appointed a forensic accountant to trace all our marital assets, which uncovered even more hidden funds and questionable transactions. Settlement negotiations were tense and protracted. Amanda's attorney initially tried to maintain aggressive demands despite their weakened position, but eventually had to concede on most points. We agreed to sell the house and split the proceeds, which gave me the financial foundation to start over. The joint savings she had emptied was ordered to be repaid, and her excessive spending during the last 6 months of our marriage was counted against her share of the assets. Thomas Baldwin, the real estate investor, who had been so visibly supportive in that first court appearance, disappeared from Amanda's life before the final settlement was signed. I later heard from mutual friends that he had moved on to another relationship almost immediately, leaving Amanda to face the consequences of her actions alone. The house sold quickly, despite the emotional difficulty of watching strangers walk through the home where I had once believed we would raise our children. With my share of the proceeds, I decided to make a complete fresh start in a new city. Portland had always appealed to me with its tech industry opportunities and quality of life. Within 2 months of the sale, I had relocated and found an apartment while I looked for something more permanent. The emotional recovery was much slower than the legal and financial resolution. For the first several months, I struggled with insomnia, replaying our marriage in my mind, questioning how I could have been so blind to Amanda's deception. Trust, which had always come naturally to me now, seemed like a dangerous liability. I became withdrawn, focusing entirely on work and avoiding any new relationships. At the suggestion of a co-worker, I finally started seeing a therapist who specialized in betrayal trauma. Those weekly sessions became my lifeline, helping me process the anger, grief, and shame that had been consuming me. Dr. Sanders helped me understand that Amanda's betrayal reflected her character, not my worth. She helped me recognize the red flags I had missed, without blaming myself for trusting someone who had presented herself as trustworthy. 6 months into therapy, I joined a support group for people who had experienced similar betrayals. Hearing others share stories that echoed my own broke through the isolation I had been feeling. Within that group, I found not only understanding, but also practical advice for rebuilding my life. 3 members of the group had even gone on to create a nonprofit, offering free legal advice to people blindsided by divorce, which inspired me to find ways to use my experience to help others. As my first year in Portland came to a close, I found a small but charming craftsman house that needed renovation. The project gave me something positive to focus on, transforming something neglected into something beautiful. Weekends spent painting, replacing flooring, and updating fixtures became a form of therapy. Each improvement to the house felt like an improvement to my life, a reclaiming of the dream of homeownership that had been tainted by betrayal. My new job at a smaller tech company offered better work-life balance than my previous position. I made a conscious decision not to fall back into workaholic patterns, setting boundaries that allowed me to develop new friendships and explore the hiking trails and cultural offerings of my new home. Slowly, the weight of betrayal began to lift, replaced by curiosity about what this new chapter might hold. A year and a half after finding those divorce papers on my kitchen counter, I finally felt ready to consider dating again. My first few attempts were awkward and anxiety-producing, but with each coffee meeting or dinner, it got a little easier. I was more cautious now, yes, but also more aware of what I truly wanted in a relationship and the warning signs I had previously ignored. The experience changed me fundamentally, but not all changes were negative. I developed financial literacy that I had previously lacked, ensuring I would never again be vulnerable to financial deception. I became more discerning about relationships of all kinds, valuing authenticity over appearance, and shared values over surface compatibility. I learned that material possessions, even dream homes, meant nothing without genuine connection and trust. Most importantly, I discovered a resilience I never knew I possessed. Having survived the worst betrayal I could imagine, I now faced challenges with a quiet confidence that whatever came, I could weather it. The pain that once threatened to destroy me had instead forced me to grow in ways I would never have chosen, but now would never trade away. As I sit on the porch of my renovated home watching the sunset over my new beginning, I feel genuine gratitude for the journey that brought me here. Not for the betrayal itself, but for the freedom and self-knowledge that eventually came from it. Life rarely follows the path we envision, but sometimes the unexpected detours lead us exactly where we need to be. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that ultimately led you to a better place? Share your story in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life experiences. Remember, sometimes what feels like an ending is actually the beginning of something better than you could have imagined. Thank you for listening, and I wish you wisdom and strength on your own journey, whatever challenges you may be facing.